Welcome, everyone. We'll be mindful of your time, so we'll get started even as we imagine that others will be coming in. We had a good all-school meeting this morning slash afternoon for others with about 37 attending, and it's good to see more of you this afternoon. We are recording these sessions, and a lot of the material we present will be placed on our coronavirus update information resources page, which I believe is sksm.edu/coronavirus. And it's part of the rotating set of, I don't know what you call them, windows on the front page as well. So we will begin. Until it's the end of the day, I'm slower finding everything. So thank you for joining us for this all-school meeting as we review the steps that Star King has taken, as we consider what may be coming up for us in the future, as we share resources and information, as we hear from you about what is important and helpful for you in this time. May this be a way of strengthening our bonds so that even as we practice spatial and physical distancing, we are not, in fact, distant from one another socially and in spirit. And so with that in mind, I'll turn to Sophia, who will read these opening words based on something written by Valerie Carr.
Valerie Carr is a civil rights activist. She's one of the founders of Revolutionary Love. And this is a message she sent out earlier this week. She writes, "What I wish for you is stillness. The blistering pace of the pandemic, the cacophony of commentary, the relentless barrage of breaking news without rest kills the root of our own wisdom, our ability to think clearly. It drives us to act on fear and panic, to hoard, to ban, to isolate, to self-protect, to act on racist impulses. But this is a time to gather the facts, then get quiet or summon our deepest wisdom and let that wisdom lead us, for we have difficult choices to make in the coming days. This pandemic will test who we want to be as individuals and as a people. Will we succumb to fear and self-interest, or will we double down on love? Will we let social distancing isolate us, or will we find new ways to reach out, deepen our connections, step up community care, and tend to the most vulnerable in our communities? Is this the darkness of the tomb or the darkness of the womb? I believe this is a time to love without limit. This is a time to see no stranger. In doing so, we gather information for the kind of world we want, where no one is uninsured or disposable, where our policies and public institutions protect all of us. And if panic or grief or rage seizes you suddenly, it's okay. It means you are alive to what is happening. The work is to breathe through it. It becomes a dance to panic and return to wisdom, to retreat and find courage to show up with love anyway. I spent all day in fear, but tonight I got quiet enough to hear the wise woman in me, and she said, "Breathe, my love." Like any long labor, we are going to take this one breath at a time.
Thank you, Sophia. I will stop the slideshow so we can watch as Sophia lights the flaming chalice for us. Then we'll return to the slideshow and say the chalice lighting words together. Several chalices, in fact, being lit.
Yes.
Let us speak these words together. With the kindling of this flame, we reaffirm
our
commitment
commitment
to
to
accept life's gifts with grace
and gratitude, and
and
to
to
use
use
them
them to
to
bless
bless
the world
in the
with the
spirit
spirit
of love.
of love.
Now I'm going to turn it over to Rosemary and then Gabriella to review the steps we've taken at Star King and across the GTU, and to give some pointers about where we may be going in the weeks ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, good evening, beloved ones. I'm glad to see you. As I said this morning, I didn't realize how much I wanted to see people until I saw people. And it is really good to see all your faces and to hear your voices. I want to begin by thanking both Krishaline and Gabriella Latini for their outstanding work as the conveners of the COVID-19 group. There was discussion early on, mid to late February, among presidents of the GTU schools about what seemed to be a growing concern. But there was a sense that cues from UC Berkeley. And that since UC Berkeley had yet to make any kind of declaration, that we would wait to see where they were. And that was, I think, on a Wednesday. But in my conversations with Chris, and especially with Gabriella, who, because of her family connections in Italy, had already had a heads up about what we might be facing in the coming weeks and months. And because we were well aware that several members of our community were immunocompromised, were over 60, and that we were groups of people who spent a lot of time together and hugged a lot and hung out a lot when we were in the building, it became clear that we needed to move ahead with measures that seemed extreme at the time for a couple of folks at the GTU anyway. And also because we had the capacity to make a different choice. We do Zoom for almost everything all the time. And it is not at all unusual for us to have meetings like this and smaller ones, to teach on Zoom, to convene on Zoom pretty regularly. So because we could, and because we knew it made sense to do it, the three of us reached a decision that we would close the school beginning March 9th through the 30th. We thought, at that point, we thought, okay, the incubation period is 2 weeks, and then we'll have spring break, and that should take us past the worst of this. And then we can kind of check in with each other every week, and maybe we can probably open school up again in April. And that has not been possible. That will not be possible. It's clear that we are in a marathon and not a sprint, that even if we wanted to try to open school, it makes no sense given what we know about the course of this pandemic, that it's been clear to the other GTU schools and to the area that they would close school physically for the rest of the semester and move to online modalities. And now the question that is lying before us now is, what about commencement? Some schools have already canceled commencement. Meadville has canceled commencement in Chicago. We haven't had a chance to have this conversation yet. The presidents will be meeting tomorrow to talk about what their schools are doing. Some of their schools have already canceled. And Gabriella and Chris and I have not yet had a conversation about what cancellation would look like and what the alternatives might be. I think one of the things that we haven't settled our heads around is, if we cancel, what do we do to create another opportunity for people who are going to graduate to celebrate with one another? And when might that be possible? And right now the answer is we don't know what's possible. So we're just going to keep thinking about it and talking about it. I think that we have a pretty small window in which to make a decision. If I had to bet on it, I'd say we have to cancel commencement. But I'm reluctant to make that decision without having something to propose in addition to that or instead of that. And I really don't want to talk about that without Gabriella and Chris's input and without hearing what other folks are doing at the GTU. So we promise to get back to you just as soon as we can about the issues relating to commencement. For now, I am really confident in the capacity of faculty to teach in a way that is in keeping with our values. I'm really confident in the support that we're getting from Gabriella and Chris, from the GTU library, at least on phone, from Hugo in Argentina, who helps us with our online education. So we have a variety of sources to support the faculty in doing this completely online work for ourselves. And what I most want to say to people is that I really want to urge you to take it slow, because I have to tell you that being on Zoom all day is exhausting. And so even if you have classes and they are scheduled, it's really taxing to learn online, to work online over long periods of time. So I've asked the faculty and staff to be mindful of the time that they spend and to take breaks and to stand outside in the sunshine at least 6 feet away from other people, I admit, but you know, to breathe and to take a minute, because this is not quite business as usual. There is a great deal of work that we can do and that we should do, because I think it's good for us to do some work and to keep some routine and to keep some sense of the life that we have been living. But I don't want us to pretend that everything is just normal, because it's not. So we have to hold these weird dichotomies at the same time. I want to turn it over to Gabriella, who has been in conversation with the deans at the GTU, who have more hour-to-hour conversations about how classes and other things will go. And I want to thank her and Chris again for their outstanding leadership in this. It's on you, Gabriella. You have to unmute, Gabriella.
Sorry, I thought I did. Thank you. Well, good afternoon or good evening, everyone. It's good to see your faces. As Rosemary said, with Chris, I've been really focused on reading everything that I could to understand, interpret the situation, both in terms of what I see happening in Italy, and of course they had that really deeply personal involvement of having my family, my church, my friends, living in northern Italy, where it's the area that has been more badly hit by the virus so far in it. And and trying to learn and from what people were doing well and what they didn't do well and what it took a while to learn and the mistakes that we were making. And so on top of the reading news in different languages, I've been talking to a lot of people that because families had their children at home for a month already, and they have been in lockdown, complete lockdown for 2 weeks now. So they have more experience. And in fact, if you go online, you see videos of people talking Italian, talking to themselves, writing letters to themselves 10 days ago, which are interesting. Some people also collected several letters in a video. They are telling you what they learned and what they wish they didn't do, as a way to teach others. They have subtitles in English to teach others in other parts of the world who are not understanding the urgency of what is happening. In any case, to make the decision that we did to close to move very early to everything happening online, I've been also constantly monitoring the Chronicle of Higher Education, official information from ATS, Association of Theological Schools. We have a Dean's thread where we constantly post information. We have been in touch constantly with the Council of Deans and having ongoing conversations and looking at what different universities are doing as well. So I wanted to tell you a few things about how things are developing. First of all, I wanted to stress again what Rosemary just told us, that why we are lucky that we are used more than other schools, way more than other schools, to function online. This is not business as usual. So we are very clear that, I love Matthew's dog. It feels like she's praying with us.
I just sent him a note. I'm howling in here. It's all I can do because she's like this.
So we are aware that, yes, we are home, but many of us, many of you are working with children at home that you are trying to homeschool. You have elderly people or friends you are taking care of, people that with very complex health conditions. Like everyone's life is so much more complicated. It's not just working from home, and there is also the added anxiety and the emotional toll of being in very difficult conversation, of being present to people that are much more need than we are, and taking time to also rest and reset so we can be more present to others. So one of the first things I told the faculty, I said, we have to be kind to each other and know that we need extra time. We need to slow down so we can have the extra time to really also take care of ourselves so we can be present to the community long term, because this is, as Rosemary said, it's going to be taking a while. And in the same way, we have to do it with students, that the students cannot just be expected to function perfectly as nothing else was going on. What does it mean specifically? We are trying to understand it as a group, and of course your feedback is very helpful. We have this particular situation that we have reading week. So after this week, we'll have some time to get together and to talk as faculty to understand, what practices seems wiser, more doable. How do we scale down with, keep the quality of what we do, but we also are attuned to what is happening to our students, to the community. So this will be, organically happening. We'll be working process in dialoguing with you. But we have started these conversations. I wanted to lift up also that while for many of the faculty, this new format is very usual, there are some people that were teaching hybrid courses, maybe being high res with just a couple of students on Zoom. And for them, this was a big change because they were not prepared to have to teach a class we have, most everyone on Zoom. So we need to support especially people that found themselves in this situation. One of our Hilda Mason fellow is in this situation. That's quite a big change. I also want to lift up the kind of grief for some of the faculty and the students. They were supposed to travel for the spring immersions to Israel, Palestine, and to Mexico. We made a decision with them over the course of 2 weeks, being in constant touch with the professor and student and monitoring the development in the different areas. And it was clear for different reasons early on that we couldn't allow our students to travel, put other people in jeopardy. And so we had canceled those classes, even though the online portion of the class is still going on and it's being reworked. But I want to acknowledge that it was for many students and the faculty, was a big letdown, as for the communities that had worked there to prepare for the arrival of the students.
Now, let me also interrupt, Gabriella, and say one of our other concerns was we were afraid that our students, even if they could arrive safely and work safely, would not be able to come home. And that is exactly what has happened to several groups who are still trapped in Bethlehem, for example, because they couldn't get out of Israel. So.
Yeah, and yes. And I basically, since I started early on working on this, I could see that the worst possible scenario was possibly the case, and it was really important to be, make decisions that were always for, the good of the people. The GTU is having, similar conversations. So, and we are having them to, with each other, helping each other to understand how to move forward. For some of the schools acknowledge, some of the deans, that their faculty are really stressed because most of them were teaching in higher res, and class suddenly to another format midway during the semester is hard. So that we don't expect anyone to be able to, people are good, are resourceful, are learning and working very hard, supporting each other. And still, this is not a situation where people start 6 months earlier learning how to do it. And so on one hand, everyone say, we need to stress with the students. The faculty will do the best they can. And it will be just also, people have to remember this is not something that was thought out carefully as when we plan courses, the semester before they take place. We are also, some of the schools are also thinking to lower the stress of the students, to move to a pass-fail system for grading this semester. It's not official yet. We are having this conversation. Many agreed it's a good thing. Some big university already did that as well. So that the focus is on learning and on lowering your, people's records. So if you are taking classes at the GTU, also know that might be something that might happen, and people understand that everyone is on a learning curve and people's life are complicated. The library, you'll still receive all the support online. For a few days, we had the possibility to check out books, but as of yesterday, since the Bay Area went in what is practically a lockdown, the library, checkout service has been suspended. So finally, I'm glad for them. People no longer have to go to the library. There are just a couple of very few people that still have to travel to make sure that we have access to all the wonderful systems that help us to teach classes. But even if you're in the Bay Area, you no longer have access to landing, services. Let me see. The ATS has been, as I told you, is having the conversation on how to proceed with all this, all these changes and challenges. This is ongoing. One thing that they let us know right away is that they understand that, you know, all the guidelines and policies that we had in place about high residency are no longer valid at this point. So at this point, don't worry about if, you know, did my course move to from high res to hybrid for everyone, and I needed that credit because everyone is understanding of this new situation. They are asking the school to documenting the changes, and luckily for us, it's already well documented that we have been working in this format for a long time. For people, for veterans in our schools also, we have communicated the changes in classes to the VA because it's very important, you know, for their benefits. Every time there is a change in our catalog, we communicate it proudly, and that has been done. Thank you, Chris. And also there is a, you know, I don't know if you know, but there was supposed to be a big conference of ATS in June to formally vote on you know, the changes that have been suggested for our standards of accreditation, and ATS is trying to figure out if that will happen in June and how it will happen, or how everything is in development, all these different, you know, areas, the GTU, Star King, ATS. So we are constantly monitoring the development, participating in conversation, and we keep updating you about what we are learning, the questions that we are seeing, the decisions that we are making, and why. At the same time, if there is anything that is a special concern that you thought we might not have thought about, or, you know, an idea, please feel free to email us. That's always welcome. I think I said the most important thing as this time, and as Rosemary said, we are also all thinking about what to do with commencement, and we are also thinking what to do with pre-registration, so that people have thought about postponing registration so that we lower the stress about these other processes. There are so many other things that take our attention. So the different schools are evaluating that, and we'll meet later this week as Council of Deans and make a decision. So we will let you know about that as well. But even if we decide not to postpone it, we will leave it open so that people will be able to constantly enroll in courses, so that people don't have to worry about being locked out of courses, etc., waiting until the fall. So thank you. Thank you for listening.
Could I interrupt? I meant to say a couple of other things, Chris, before you go on. I want to let you know that even though the building is closed, there are a couple of key people who have been at the school. One of them is Fred, and I want you to hold Fred in your thoughts and prayers because he has been cleaning endlessly. It has been very important to make sure that the building is ready for people when we are finally able to come into the school. And we will have a more specific protocol once we are able to be back in the building officially. But in the meantime, Fred has been doing doorknobs, banisters, handrails, light switches, in addition to the bathrooms and everything else, doing a deep cleaning to make sure that the building is safe for all of us to be in it. So send a note, drop a line, and thank Fred because he has been putting in significant time in making sure that the building is safe for us to be in. And I also want you all to also know that even though the building is closed, there are a couple of people who come in and out to make sure that key things happen, so that Kelly is at his usual spot in the basement, as he likes to say, making sure that bills get paid and that the mail gets picked up and that donations get uh, recorded. And OASE is also periodically coming into the building. I've asked all of them not to hang out there, to put their safety and their health first. But they're all only doing the things that they must do to make sure that certain things keep going. We need to be able to pick up the mail, especially because a couple of days ago, they noticed that there might have been some attempt to break into the mailbox. We have that secure mailbox outside. And so there's just a minimum number of people going into the building. I understand, Matthew, you snuck in there once. Okay. But mostly I would like people to be out of the building and at home and safe. Knowing at the same time that the building ultimately would be okay to be in once it's time for us to go back. But please give a thought and prayer to Fred and Oasis and Kelly and Matthew for making sure that we're all okay financially and in terms of the bureaucratic things that have to happen.
Okay. Yes,
Chris, can I
Gabriella.
just add a quick? I just wanted to say that, of course, the challenges that you might experience with in your life, as you say, will be, the faculty are experiencing their own. So as much as I encourage faculty to be really gracious and understanding and listening to the students, I also ask you to please really be gracious to the faculty. They are also figuring out something that no one had expected at this moment. And so to always, err on the side of kindness and in this moment and be in dialogue and support of each other as we move forward in the next weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, several of you saw Isaac hanging out in here before Kelly came and got him because SpongeBob SquarePants was totally not working with him anymore.
How could that be? Squidward is not.
He gets tired of the screen before Emma does. Which is a good
Wow.
thing, but it just makes it a little bit harder right now. So yeah, in that spirit, we ask for your patience as it may be slower to get some things out, to make some updates sometimes. So for example, I'm sharing in the chat our coronavirus information and resources page. And yes, it is currently out of date. So we do need to make an update to that, and we will. It's been a few days since we have, but we have information on there, and we're going to be sharing more resources. Some of which we're just going to do a whistle-stop tour of in a little bit, because one thing that we've wanted to do in leadership, Gabrielle and I have been emailing each other articles and resources and websites we found a lot, because we've just been wanting to collect information together. We know that everyone's time is limited and the demands on it are many. So one thing we want to be as a resource for you and help point the way towards material that can be very helpful as we navigate uncertain times. Because there's a lot out there, and it can be very unhealthy to keep picking up your phone every several minutes and looking for the latest updates and websites to check. And not all of us have Chloe, the emotional support dog, in our lap, ready to care for us. So with that, I'll bring back up the PowerPoint and just share some of the things that we have found, in which we're going to list these on that page on the website. So don't feel like you need to run like crazy writing down the links that we share. So first of all, it's always important to keep up with guidelines, recommendations, and updates provided by health organizations, beginning with the World Health Organization, which will provide a lot of information about what's happening globally, the fact that this is a crisis that is touching upon almost every country at this point, and is calling for efforts and best practices around the board. So this is the website where you can check out what the World Health Organization is saying. Here in the United States, we have the resource page of the Centers for Disease Control, where they may provide updates, and often you'll see something that's listed there before it starts making its way around the news sites. So for example, the other day, I went to the CDC site and I saw that guideline about not having gatherings of 50 people or more. And I must have seen it right there just as it was posted, because I saw it before New York Times or CNN or anyone else had picked up on that. Also, it's very good to locate the website for your municipal public health department. If it's a state, a county, a city public health department, that could have more detailed information than national sites about reported cases, about recommended actions, closings, anything like that. So this is an example of the Alameda County Public Health Department, but you can find what might be the local health department in your area that would have more detailed information for where you live. Of course, we are involved in our various faith or spiritual communities, many of us, and we may be in positions of formal leadership or lay leadership, and we see that our spiritual communities are having to make decisions about how to gather in new ways, how to hold worship, and how to care for their members. And my Facebook feed was lit up on Sunday morning with all kinds of live videos as people were demonstrating how their churches were retooling to offer worship online. And then I was just in a conversation with the pastor of my church this morning about a list of persons to reach out to in the church to see if they need help with getting groceries or medical deliveries. You can go to the UUA website, where they have a page to provide recommendations for how congregations can respond to the coronavirus. This is interesting. Convergence is a progressive Christian organization that does a lot of training and webinars, and I saw them promoting this the other day. A webinar called I Have Live Streamed the Lord, which is about how to conduct services live online. They go through best practices and platforms to use. They have a bunch of other webinars and resources as well, but this is just an example of what can be provided. And some of these are you have to pay for them, but they're having a sale for $10 for this one right now. You could check out other resources that they have at faithlead.org. The CDC itself has a platform for guidelines and checklists for community organizations and religious communities, suggestions for best practices from cleaning to how to shift organizational operations in light of the coronavirus. Of course, it's important for us to really look at the impacts of the coronavirus through an eco lens. The way in which the spread of this pandemic will fall on different communities and groups in certain ways, and certain identities will face impacts in a greater way. This will impact the way that social justice organizations are engaging in their work. And then finally, it calls for reflection on what kind of change we want to call for in society in the light of the coronavirus. So Gabrielle and I have been looking at different resources that are available online. One that I found really interesting was this podcast and community online called Irresistible. If you may have heard them under their old name as the Healing Justice Podcast. If you go to this page, not only do they have a couple of podcasts, but they have a whole list of resources and pages. I saw several disability advocacy resources there. And then Gabriella, you especially found a bunch of these other resources, and you want to say more about what you found?
Yes, and for the sake of time, since so that we have more time for the community to talk back, I think we should just illustrate in general the areas of work now, because I see that it's late. But yes, we collected more that is now there, and we will add more material and update this list and have it on the website. But I've been looking at activists, authors, groups with which we have been working with the eco class that I know, our different communities are related and see what kind of knowledge are they gathering, what are they doing, and so trying to both highlight national work and local work. And I know that many of you will have resources as well, but we'll update constantly this list with some of the most we think were maybe more helpful resources from groups that we have been connected in some ways. And I just wanted to say in particular, I mean, this, what Chris said, that will be always the most vulnerable for different reasons among us, that will be, or the most already touched by systemic injustice, that will be affected by this virus. The level of ableism and ageism that has been rampant really in so many communities and been very mainstream has been very worrisome to me. So that is a special invitation to just, we cannot pick up every single thread of discussion, but definitely be very constant in reframing that this is a community concern for everyone and there are not disposable people. It seems obvious, but I heard it so much that has been, yes, it's troubling. Also, it's the other troubling thing is that if you look at trends in different countries, you'll hear different things. So just because Italy had a lot of elderly people doesn't mean that that's what is happening, that have been dying. It's different trends are happening in different countries. So even for the ageist and ableist, I think it's just, it's just, it's necessary to completely let go of this kind of thinking. Yeah, you put different resources on personal resilience. Yeah, we mentioned the importance of knowing that to be able to tend to others and be present to others in different ways in your personal life, community life, leadership of various kinds, you need to be able to constantly tend to your own emotional, physical, spiritual well-being. And it's an ongoing process. So we put some resources. We know that our students already receive constantly through a lot of their courses, a lot of resources, and you have practices, but be very mindful to, if you feel that you need extra helps, you need more idea to look at some of the resources that we highlighted. Today, one student was pointing out how physically this is, the anxiety is manifesting for many of us. And so how to think about what are somatic practices to engage that help us to grow through moments of, deep anxiety. So for some people it's PTSD because this is bringing up a lot of different situations, or being, be mindful that this is to address this in a very holistic way.
Thank you, Gabriela. So once again, we'll make sure to put these links on our coronavirus page on the website. And if there are resources that you have found particularly helpful, please send an email to Gabriela and I and share it with us. But this time, we want to open it up to hear from you. We've spoken a lot about what's happening at Star King and the administration and the management of the school and the decisions we have to make. But we want to know how you're doing. And so we're going to open up for you to indicate what is live and urgent for you. What are the questions that you have? What are deep needs maybe that, or perhaps Star King can help address? What are your prayers, your hopes, and your concerns that you lift up? It's pretty open for you to share what you want to speak into the space. You can type into the chat or unmute and just let us know how you're doing. And so we'll open that up to you now.
I would like to express my gratitude for my tech ministry experience at Star King, and the ability I have in my current internship to support 3 congregations in navigating this. So thank you, Star King.
Who else has something to share?
I want to lift up the beauty that is Star King. And as people have been fumbling their way into figuring out how to make their own systems work, realizing what a beauty it is that Star King was able, because of what we've been doing for years, to step into this so easily. I've had friends that are like, oh my gosh, what is your school doing? What's your work doing? And I said, oh, we just took the things that we've been doing and made them do everything. You know, we already had the ability to work from home and we already had the ability to take classes remotely. All we've done is just shift it so it's all done remotely rather than being in the building. And it's just fantastic when you're able to see something work so seamlessly. We didn't need to take days off or weeks off to try to figure out how to make this work. We just transitioned right into it. And it was done so seamlessly that it feels like the beauty of the constant when everything else is changing.
I've been finding myself feeling a great deal of gratitude for all of the changes that are happening that maybe are turning our world around. I feel like it's a rebirthing of our entire way of living. And I've had this kind of vision of Greta Thunberg saying, "Oh, I hadn't thought of that, but that's going to work. I think this is going to work." Uh, where we're learning new ways of working. We're learning new ways of working in community and being there for each other. We're learning ways of connecting through the ether, finding our way of being with each other when we're not physically with each other. All of these things, these superpowers that we've always had, that now we get to exercise and we get to really put them in place. And
Uh-oh, we had a freeze. Hopefully Joaquin will rejoin us shortly. I want to note Taya and Chris Long's comments in the chat as well. Thank you very much.
I just want to thank you all for being so thoughtful about how you're going about this, and the level of communication that you've given to us, and I would agree that, like what Maddie said, that it's the Star King experience, but a little more of it. And school is the thing that I don't worry about. I mean, commencement needs to be worked out, but whatever you decide is, I think, going to be fine with me anyway. But I really do appreciate how thoughtful you've been about how you're going through this, because it's really uncharted territory for everyone. And we don't know what it's going to look like on the other side, and when we look back on it. And I think, safety is the first priority. And I would also think that it is sort of a blessing in disguise that we've been forced somehow to stop our breakneck pace and slow down a little bit. And all those things that we're talking about in my spiritual practices class with Chris Fry are so relevant right now, about taking some time out for ourselves. It's almost like we're being forced to, and that in itself is a blessing. But I just want to say thank you to Star King faculty and administration for everything you're doing to support us.
Thank you, Rob. Anyone else? Yeah, thank you, Stephanie, for pointing out the hospital staff. We have my sister-in-law and brother-in-law are both nurses, and both their hospitals have coronavirus patients. Our neighbors across the street, husband and wife, are both nurses, and their son is in kindergarten class with Emma. They have coronavirus patients at both their hospitals. The strain for them is just going to become more and more difficult in the days ahead. Concerns about running out of masks and running out of ventilators, and even as we hope for positive change and new possibilities, there's a whole lot of pain, and it's a lot of people aren't going to be comforted about the idea of positive change because of what they have to go through in the coming days. So we're true heroes for us. Any others?
I don't know where I got cut off because I made a wonderful speech and then everything turned away. But I'll just say thank you, great gratitude, and I really do hope we come out of this with some learning and some beauty that, and I'm seeing that happening. So
Yeah.
Much love to all of you. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, Akil. Well, we're going to move towards closing our time. We're going to share a song video, a performance of "There Is a Love" by former Star King President Rebecca Parker at a gathering of the UU Musicians Network. It's a different tune than we're used to in the way we chant it here, but the words are familiar, so you may wish to meditate on them or sing along in your own way as we play the video. So let this be a time for repose and prayer of the heart, and then we'll have a verbal prayer and blessing from Rosemary as we dismiss.
Chris, can you share your sound as well as your video? Chris, could you share your sound as well as your video?
Oh, I thought I did. All right, hang on. Thought I had it set up for that, but maybe not. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I didn't press that. Okay, one glitch to close out the day.
President of Stargate,
I want to thank all of you for being here this evening. I want to lift up in prayer all of us, our graduates, our students, who are especially called upon in this moment in the healthcare system. We have chaplains all over the country who are on the front lines in ways that others of us are not. We have family members and friends who are nurses and doctors and lab technicians and other people who are also struggling and fighting for the health and the well-being of all of us. And so I want us to hold them, especially in our hearts, along with Gabriella's family and friends back home. We pray for them. Well, let us enter into this spirit of prayer. We are asked to isolate ourselves, and yet we are called to connection. Our souls and our spirits need not stay 6 feet apart. May our love for one another, our love for the holy, our love for the world remind us of what is deeper and more permanent than illness and fear and confusion. May we rest in that knowledge and that love. Blessed be Ashe and Amen. Thank you all so much. I will be praying for all of you. Please pray for me. And take care of yourselves. I love you. Be well.